Well, good evening, everybody. I'll be the first to tell you Happy New Year. A little early, but, I'm not planning to stay up until midnight. I know many of you, and I know y'all aren't either, so, maybe Franco's going to stay up. He loves that's not true. Franco will be in bed about 9:15. Well, I was asked since Barry is out of town to fill in for him. If you've gotten a worksheet, which you should do, if you haven't gotten one, you can already tell we are not finishing 2 Kings tonight. I did not think I would do that justice. And so Chad told me I could teach whatever I wanted. So this is what you get when that happens. So take that for what it's worth. In early 2025, when Chip taught us 1 Thessalonians, towards the end of the book in chapter 4, the phrase, if you use the New American Standard, the phrase excel still more shows up twice. Once in, I think, verse either 1 or 2, and then again in verse 10. I love the New American Standard because excel still more sounds very lofty, whereas some of the other translations basically saying just do better, or do that and do it some more. Excel still more has a certain weight to it. And to me, I've never been super supportive of congregations like picking a theme for the year and then announcing that theme and then kind of constructing the year around it. I haven't seen it yet be super successful. Maybe sometime I will, and I'll get turned around and love that idea. But what I love what happened this year was that when Chip taught that, and we dwelt on that excel still more idea a couple of times. By my unofficial math, I think since then, nearly every adult class and almost everyone who preached before our group that was part of the group used the phrase excel still more in their teaching. And I just love that idea of no one told us that needed to be our theme, but we all kind of coalesced around that idea that when Paul wrote this letter to the Thessalonians, it's not like 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians is rough, man, almost from the very beginning. They've got all these issues, they've got all these problems, and sometimes you can look at 1 Corinthians and be like, man, those guys, whew, glad we're not them. But simultaneously, it can be, a little, if you're in a congregation that doesn't have all those issues that Corinthians has, and thankfully, I think we're in a congregation that doesn't have any of those issues that the Corinthians face that I'm aware of. You can kind of say, well, what do we do? Well, in 1 Thessalonians, Paul answered that question for us. If you think that you are doing well, that's not bad. It's okay to look at the deeds and the work of our collective efforts and say, I am proud in a righteous way. I am happy. I am excited about being here. But we can still take forward the idea that we should excel still more. That's how you fight complacency. That's how you don't become a congregation that people talk about in the past tense. We used to do, and fill in the blank. That used to be the congregation where fill in the blank. And I've known lots of congregations that was the way it was, and a decade on or 2 decades on, people still talked about what was done 10 or 20 years before. If our goal is to not be a congregation of God's people that dwells in the past tense and instead thinks about the future tense, we have to embrace this idea of even if we have done well thus far, we can still embrace Paul's instruction to the Thessalonians, and we can excel still more. So the first thing I want you to do, the first 2 questions on the right-hand side of the worksheet, talk about Woodland Hills and this idea of excelling still more. I want us to think about the past, think about the future as well. What are things that you have seen Woodland Hills excel still more in this year? You're going to write them down first, Mara. Not everyone's an extrovert. We have to give them time, okay? things that you have been pleased, excited, overjoyed about the congregation picking up and excelling in. And then as you think about 2026, I'd also like you to write down a few things that you could see us as a group choosing to excel in more as well. We'll take just a couple minutes. I'd love it if everybody wrote down 2 or 3, at least, in each of those, and then I want to have some conversation. And Mara wants to go first. So. If you happen to be visiting with us, you can do this exercise for where you are worshiping now as well. So I see some of you out there. I expect you, heads down, writing stuff down. McKenna, I want you guys, you have some ideas? Hopefully this can apply to everyone. That was the goal. All right, if you haven't gone on to thinking about 2026, go ahead and skip, finish your thought on 2025 and go down to 2026 and what you would love for us to excel still more in the coming year. All right, Mara, what you got?
First thing that came to my mind was our children's Bible classes.
Great.
I feel like there's been so much work done by some really good workers, and more streamlined, more accessible, easier to teach. The children are learning great. It's just, that stood out in my mind first.
That's great. Brian, you should reach around and pat yourself on the back a little bit for that. I'm serious. I say that because I think sometimes we can leave the idea that if I'm a humble servant, I don't recognize that I did good work. And that is a recipe for servants not having resilient service. We need to recognize good service. And Brian, it's important that you and Stephanie recognize that, because we want you to be encouraged to keep doing it. And if you constantly feel like you have to just say, well, everyone else is doing hard work, it wasn't going as well before you guys were doing it. So take some credit, not from an arrogant point of view, but from the fact that a servant should be able to look at their work and take joy and fulfillment in it. I mean, Ecclesiastes tells us that over and over, right? Marge, you have another one?
Well, I was just going to say, not only just like the work being done, but everybody else behind the work. Like ready to cut stuff out, to work and to be behind the mission to make our children's houses better.
It's great. Awesome. Another one. Joshua.
I love that you changed it, the Sunday thing from group meeting to connection meeting. And we are just been taking off with it and have been enjoying it. Trying to connect with all these visitors that are coming into our community, neighborhood and things, and writing them cards and letters and being like, hey, we appreciate you coming.
Thank you. I thought that was on my list. That's something I've been really excited with. I purposefully delayed changing it until I had an idea of what that change could be. And that took a while to figure out. That's why that didn't happen right away. And I've been so glad that the group has been so supportive. And I do think that we have begun to see the fruit of what it looks like when you make concerted effort to reach out to people that visit from the community. Thanks, Joshua. Wayne?
But emphasis on being with other members away from the congregation building. And I see that in young families, and I see it in the younger members that meet it, once a month, and
Yeah.
the ladies that get together a whole lot. It's just a big thing that you don't see at other congregations.
Yeah, so what Wayne recognizes is that as a group, we do a good job of being together outside of just our worship times. And I'll tell you, one of my parts of that I'm so excited about is that it is impossible to attend everything, and there is zero expectation that you do. I've never heard one of our members shame or speak ill of someone else who didn't go to XYZ thing. They've simply encouraged, potentially, if someone didn't attend, but really made certain that everyone has a place to grow and grow with others. And by the way, speaking of servants that deserve some acknowledgement, 18 months ago, Jared and Ariel realized that age group, if you want to call it young people, 30, 35 and below, weren't as connected as they could be. And so Jared and Ariel said, well, I think we can help with that. And they put a plan in place. And they started working on that. And for them, success in that and how you go from 2024 to 2025 is now, in 24, there were very few times when that group was getting together a lot outside. 2024, they started getting together monthly. And now in 2025, that group gets together a lot, and Jared and Ariel aren't planning any of it except for the Sunday night thing. That's what leadership and change looks like when other people take forth the baton and start carrying that service forward, and it's not just one group that's continuing to kind of input that energy. Brian, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I think that for the group here, you've already touched on a couple times, is the service that we have and that mindset of serving others. And that's many different layers. I won't touch on all those so they'll be convenient. The one I want to think of right now is the result of our special service class and what led to us evaluating how we move forward in selecting some more servants that will lead in some areas and relieve some of the elders from those duties. And I say that just from being a part of it personally, I'm very encouraged at how we discussed that, how we went through that process, how we chose those people to serve in those areas, and then being a part of that, how we serve with each other, and how we are communicating, how we are helping, how we are encouraging. We're not just letting any one of us be on by ourselves. We're constantly talking, and I'll throw this back to you, Adam, and give you some pat on your back for being proactive and setting up ongoing meetings to where we are holding ourselves accountable when we're doing things to make sure that our work is being done efficiently and proactively. And I think the body is seeing the fruit of that. And we're doing good things. We have a lot of work to do. But I've just been highly encouraged by that.
So I want to make sure everybody heard what Brian said. That the way in 24 we studied special servants, thought about deacons, went through that process, appointed new deacons, and then kind of where we are really 18 months on from that, right? On my list was both that the deacons we've been growing a lot. If you look, what we're doing now is not what we were doing 18 or 12 or even 6 months ago, right? We've kind of grown every quarter and changed and developed, and that's been beneficial for us. But I want to give our elders some credit in that they have been willing to hand off some things that it's not easy when you're a leader to give work to other people sometimes. On the surface, it might seem that way, but it can be difficult to trust and to believe that all the things you want to happen are going to happen. And so this has been a growing process, I would say, for the elders and the deacons of us sometimes pressing the elders to let us do more, and sometimes the elders pressing us that they want to still, take the lead on certain things and own that. And that's on my list of 2026 things that we still got a long way to go and a long way to grow in that stuff. Any others that folks have before we go into things you want to see next year? Franco.
I would like to speak personally on benevolence because on an individual level, some people will not know what the other person did. From a group level, it was always in abundance. It was always in excess. To have like a personal needed help, it's just overwhelming. And secondly, the fact that we make connections in a particular region of the world and decided that's the area we want to focus on moving forward, making plans from there, with us being able to just focus on evangelism enough. I think if you the previous plan and organically the way it's happened, not guess, but I believe because of my intervention, we see that there is opportunity for people that are so many episodes. The fact that this conversation has decided to be done, I see that as 2025 Civic Foundation and 2026 part of that.
You're going to be.
That's going to make it happen.
Yeah. So how we've connected with evangelists, how we've tried to grow our efforts in evangelism here, but also kind of making the hard choice to say we aren't going to focus everywhere because focusing everywhere isn't focus. So we're going to choose where our congregation is most connected and look to Africa to focus some of our efforts there. Before we go on to 2026, one I'll mention is I've never been to another congregation that has so many people who are willing and able to teach and preach. And we've seen that grow so much this year. If you go look at where David was in 24 and how he's grown through 25, that is a huge credit to him. It's a huge credit to Barry, but it's also a credit to the congregation that we don't say like, well, you're either kind of a professional preacher or you're not. So you can preach once a year and that's kind of it. But the elders kind of choosing, and also we've had lots of men who've said, no, I want to speak more. Eli has spoken multiple times. And if you look back in 24 before, we didn't have that. Jared just taught his first full quarter Bible class on his own for us. That's something that he had done a little bit in San Diego while they were away. But again, he's grown in that way. Well, in order to do that, we have to push each other towards that opportunity. All right, Mara, one last one.
I really like how we've excelled in making our singing more meaningful, Lord's Supper more meaningful as a group, and the contribution to be more thankful focus.
Yeah. So there's shifts in our worship that have not been, I wouldn't say seismic changes, but they've been tweaks to how can we, over time, improve worship. That's great. All right, now, 2026, what are some things you guys want us to see further investment in, further hope that we can excel more in? Joshua?
I know for me personally, I'm going to want to start more to work with the people my age here, the young singles, to try and get us to be together more. Because I know for me personally, it's harder for the devil to get to me when I'm with the other Christians.
Yeah, amen. Great. Others? Chip?
Yeah, well, I would say all the above. Since that's the theme.
Yep.
Still more.
Yeah.
Everything that's been said, let's just do more of it.
It's not meant to be a trick question. I kind of gave you the answer to the test a little bit.
But I
Yeah.
would add to that I really personally would hope to stimulate a desire for all to want to have a relationship with God, a meaningful, real, dependent, loving relationship with God, personal relationship with God, such that you really want to be with Him for eternity. And I especially want to focus on developing that in teenagers.
That's great.
2026.
Kathy? Yeah, Chip said, ideally, in a broad way, encouraging and inspiring everyone to develop a personal relationship with God, really lean into that, but especially if we're going to narrow that down even further, that we work with our teens, of which I have 2 of them. I would love help with this, inspiring them to set their life on that course as well. Franco?
I know we talk about the word service and servants, but it is very difficult in culture, in society we live in, to take the form of voice. I would love, when you look at the Bible, what is mentioned about 1,000 times. Therefore, it means I'm not alone. And for us to take the form
So Franco is kind of leaning there into the service as well, but really thinking about how we model service in the image of Christ. One of the things I had on my list was, and I think about this a lot in my connections area, is how do we do two things? So if we just say generally we want to increase the service of our group, there's kind of two ways to do that. There is to get current servants to serve more. Good thing. And then there are ways to get people who maybe aren't as involved in service to serve more. Both of those things are extremely important to becoming and being more servant-oriented, is we have to expand the base of servants. We have to make those opportunities available. So if you are a person who is what you would describe as service and servant-oriented, you need to ask yourself, how am I pulling others along into that service? How am I inspiring others to be a servant? How am I making certain that the opportunities I know about don't all get taken care of before someone else finds out about them? I think, Franco, you're a great example of that. Since you're kind of in the benevolent seat as a deacon, you find out about a lot of potential servant and service needs that some of them get taken care of quietly on the side. There can be an issue if all of them get taken care of that way, though, because then there are people who may not be finding out about ways to serve. And Brian could feel the same way in his area. A lot of the deacons, we need to think more about how do we expand who can serve and how do we make that stuff available and visible. Great. Other things to excel still more in. Mara.
Our group studies that we do quarterly are very unifying, but I've noticed sometimes our attendance is low. That's like 6 adults one time in our group study. It can be discouraging, but I feel like it's a very unifying time, and maybe how do we increase participation in that?
Yeah, so how do we encourage folks to take part in the quarterly studies? We're going to rebrand those as just quarterly studies, not call them group studies anymore, I think. One thing that, like, so you know, we're going to kind of compress those, and we're not going to have a Q4 study. We're not going to have a study in the fourth quarter. We're going to compress those. We're still going to have 4 studies, but they're going to kind of not include October, November, December, because the study you're talking about that only had 6 adults that happened at both of the fourth quarter studies last year, and it happened the year before. So kind of tweaking, hey, there may be some time of year things that if we want everyone to participate, we might need to avoid certain times of year that are just a lot of burden, right? So how do we kind of think about encouraging inclusion and those sorts of things, and that may mean changing when they happen. And that's part of how I'm thinking about it. All right, I want us to kind of look at Psalm 101 for a minute, and then kind of think about how David would approach these. So the first 2 questions are what we'll work on right after I'm done reading Psalm 101. So we'll read that and then take a minute or two. And then the ultimate goal is to think about, are there things, this last question, David expresses a bunch of concerns and things that he's going to do in order to increase his service and relationship with the Father. How do we think about the concerns and the things that he mentions and overlay that with what we hope to excel still more in 2026 and identify potential things we should be thinking about to protect our growth and our ability to excel? All right, Psalm 101. I will sing of steadfast love and justice. To you, O Lord, I will make music. I will ponder the way that is blameless. Oh, when will you come to me? I will walk with integrity of heart within my house. I will not set before my eyes anything that is worthless. I hate the work of those who fall away. It shall not cling to me. A perverse heart shall be far from me. I will know nothing of evil. Whoever slanders his neighbor secretly, I will destroy. Whoever has a haughty look and an arrogant heart, I will not endure. I will look with favor on the faithful in the land, that they may dwell with me. He who walks in the way that is blameless shall minister to me. No one who practices deceit shall dwell in my house. No one who utters lies shall continue before my eyes. Morning by morning I will destroy all the wicked in the land, cutting off the evildoers from the city of the Lord. All right, I want you to ponder, you can ponder all 3 questions if you have time, but what's David thinking about? How's he setting his mind to improve and to grow in his relationship with God? The second there, what things is David clearly concerned about? And then the last one, how can we think about the ways that David's expressing his concern and how that could inform how we excel still more in the coming year? Take a couple minutes and make some notes. Take just a minute or two, maybe actually more like 30 seconds. Finish up your thought, and then we'll keep going. All right, what can you see as David's thinking about the future? How is he trying to set his mind so that he can attain to being what the Lord wants him to be? Brian?
He wants to choose a path that is blameless.
Yeah, so he wants to choose a path that is blameless. And I'll say first, he says he's going to consider and ponder blamelessness. That I think often we can kind of think about doing right or living righteously and just assume that if you've decided, well, I'm going to live righteously, then I'll just make all righteous decisions from here on out. Where really I think what he's saying here is he actually needs to spend time considering and meditating what would blamelessness look like in a decision or a situation that will come to him. Not just deciding I'm going to do the right things, but I may choose to do some things that are unnecessary, but are blameless in their accord. Right? I think that's one thing we've talked to our daughters about a bit lately is sometimes it is easy to believe that you're doing right, but unless you have chosen to take the path that is certainly blameless, you have opened yourself up potentially in some ways. Wayne?
Integrity of heart and how it goes along with that. Are you fooling yourself? Are you doing it for the right reason? Is it for growth or is it for show?
Yeah, so are you seeking to be blameless because the Lord wants you to be blameless or because it looks good? Are you seeking to be blameless because it's about the integrity of who you are as a servant of God, or because, I hang out with people who kind of do right. If I want to keep hanging out with them, I'm going to have to keep doing right. In some ways, it's good hanging out with a pack, as Joshua mentioned. The devil finds it harder to get us when we're with others, but we have to choose to be with God, and then that kind of sets our friend group. Not we choose our friend group, and that determines, I guess I'll serve God. Right? There's a difference of order there. Joshua?
Right off the bat, he says, I'll make music. So he's singing about the various things. So he's going through the Psalms and singing about the things that the Lord has done and the things the Lord will do.
Yeah, I love that. So he's singing of God's steadfast love and justice, and he's making music. Making music implies that he's likely sharing that with others in some way. Maybe he's just keeping it to himself, but that seems unlikely. But that he is pondering how God has been steadfast to him in the past, which will help him in the future know that God will be steadfast in his love with him also. Great. What else do you guys see in David's mind that he has set and chosen? Franco?
The fact that he's chosen to protect what he's going to look at and how he uses his eyes to the right things.
Yeah, so he's choosing what he's going to look at. He is choosing the things he's going to avoid. He's making both a positive and a negative choice. I'm going to choose blamelessness, for example, but I'm going to keep a perverse heart from me. I won't know evil at all. We have to make both choices. We have to choose the positive, what we will be, and we have to decide to avoid the negative. And sometimes I think we may spend a lot of time focusing on avoiding the negative without talking enough about the positive choice we need to move towards as well. Let's go on. So what things is David concerned about? Why does he think he needs to do this? Or what does he think is coming for him potentially that he's got to be aware of? Emily?
Something I think is interesting is that it starts with that singing and then the pondering and then the walking in goodness and then getting rid of things. But then after that, it talks about the destruction of things that are wrong. And that's sort of the next action in the sequence. So I think it's interesting that it comes after all of those things. So it's not like, let's just destroy all the evil first thing before I ever consider about what God wants or what I should be doing or think to worship God first. And then the idea of getting rid of evil and sort of taking the things that are saying, that are sort of pulling you further away from God and saying, no, I don't want that. I'm going to do something positive with my life. I think that you have to actively be pushing off those burrs.
Yeah, there's an active push and pull that's almost simultaneously. He's doing two things at once. But I do really like that you pointed out, Emily, that he makes this decision at the beginning about how he's going to focus on God's steadfast love before he talks about how much he's going to push out evil. And we may sometimes spend a lot of time thinking about pushing out evil. I know that's easier for me. It feels more productive in a way, as opposed to I'm just going to dwell on what God I'm going to dwell on God. I'm going to meditate on righteousness. I don't know, that doesn't always feel productive. But getting the sin out, fighting Satan actively, that feels more productive. But they are both equal sides of the coin. If you leave a void, something will fill the void. So if you try to kick Satan out of your life and you haven't pre-planned what's going to fill that void, same stuff's just going to come back into it, right? Great. What else do you guys see about what David's concerned about or fearful of?
He's fearful of Satan taking a hold of him because he's not going to set anything before his eyes. He's not going to do anything that would even give Satan something to hold on to.
Yeah, so he's taking all these steps to protect, which acknowledges that he has this concern. And, we know enough about David to know that sometimes when that happened, it's kind of dead right. His sin with Bathsheba was he saw something and he went exactly down the path that he's talking about. I'm not good enough in the Psalms to know if this is before Bathsheba or after Bathsheba. Some other Psalms expert can tell you that. But I do think this is about David knowing himself well enough to know I have to be really careful to not get into the Bathsheba situations because I lack self-control. And so I got to make certain I'm not in positions where I have to really lean on my self-control. I have to pre-plan so that I kind of make those decisions beforehand. What other issues, Franco?
He's concerned about the condition of the people dwelling in the house of God, in the land that God has given. And so at the end, it talks about in the city of the Lord. And he's concerned that this is not acceptable.
Yeah, so he's concerned that there may be like a cancer growing, essentially, in those that are servants of God. And he can't allow it. And I love the phrase he uses, that he's not going to allow anything to cling to him. I love thinking that idea as evil and sin and all that comes with it is almost like sticky. It's like syrup. It's hard to get off of you once it gets on you. So I'm going to make certain that nothing is clinging to me because I have to move through this sinful world. I can't just not be here. So I have to continually, actively seek to purify myself and make certain that none of this evil is clinging. Brian?
Yeah, on that same note, Bronco, verse 5 is, you see the heart of him as a shepherd to his people. That it's not just about him, as Bronco was saying, he was about his people. Because he's talking about whoever slanders his neighbor secretly out of the store, whoever has a haughty look and arrogant heart, whoever's doing evil to his neighbor, to God's people, he's going to eliminate. So it's not just protection of him, his service as a leader, as a king. It's, I'm going to cleanse the Lord's people in the Lord's house to glorify God. And he goes through this as Franco pointed out, he ends it by the city of the Lord. So you kind of see what the mindset is.
Yeah, I called out too the slandering his neighbor issue, that clearly he is worried about how brothers will treat brothers. And that as the king, he cannot abide that. You don't get to come to the king and talk bad about your neighbor. He's a bad guy, I don't like him, he's always moving the markers, all this kind of stuff. If you have a judicial complaint, let's take care of that. But you don't just get to come in here and talk bad about people. And his position as king, that's super important, right? He's deciding the culture of his kingdom and what that's going to look like when brothers have problems with brothers. Great.
And he's doing both ways. He's going to praise, he's going to find the people that are doing good and support them, but he's also going to find the people who are doing wrong and seek them out and purge them as well.
Right. The last one that I noticed that I don't think anyone called out is in verse 3. Talking about setting his eyes, but we didn't recognize that he talks about he's not going to set his eyes on things that are worthless. And I love that idea of he's not just saying, hey, I'm not just going to avoid bad stuff. There's a bunch of stuff in the middle that's not evil. It's not bad, but it's just unhelpful. It's just worthless and helping me serve God better and become a better servant of His. And that stuff in the middle is super distracting frequently. So he is calling out that for me to be the leader and the king that I want to be, I have to reject the worthlessness. I don't get to take stuff in the middle. I have to avoid the really bad. I have to avoid the worthless because I don't really even have enough time to do all the righteous I need to do. I can't waste my time on these worthless things also. So now, and this may be a stretch, like you might have to work at this a little bit. When you think about kind of the concerns that David raises, maybe the ways he talks about preventing them, I want you to now think about that list we shared about what we want to excel still more in 2026. And think about, are there any statements that we need to make like this so that we can focus on excelling still more and protecting ourselves from the sorts of things that David is clearly concerned about? What do y'all think about that? Yes, ma'am.
So first thought I had was when he's talking about, removing things that are worthless, not necessarily bad, but just in today's world, time consuming. And how much of that can we get rid of that we can apply that time to other things that are more productive and useful for God?
Great. So if we have said, Franco called it out earlier, that we want to be a people known as servants in Christ's image, we may have to actively reject some things that aren't evil, they're not bad, but maybe they don't fulfill that being a servant in Christ's image ideal. That may be some personal things we need to do. That may be some things we should think about as a congregation as well. Are there things that we do that distract us from that service? By the way, I'm not trying to insinuate that I've got some ideas and I want to hash those out with people. I'm simply saying that applies personally and it applies congregationally as well. Great. Others? Chip?
So in verse 2, he talks about an integrity of heart, and in verse 4, he talks about a perverse heart. I think that when new ideas are being raised in any environment, since we're just talking about the church and what we want to do, I think we should check our hearts to make sure that we're not judging ideas based on some bias we may have, a predisposition that we may have, and be open to considering them honestly, having an honest heart.
So I love Chip's call out here that as we think about who we want to be as a church. So I'm thinking a lot about identity. My sermon Sunday morning was about identity. I'm thinking about how identity comes into some of our quarterly group studies. And for example, if we want to have the identity of a group like the Bereans that searches the scriptures daily to know the Lord and the Word more, that means at some level we have to make certain we are coming to that with an honest heart, that we really want to seek and understand the scriptures no matter what it tells us to do. Whether it confirms things I've believed before or tells me that I may have some issues I need to deal with, we have to bring that integrity of heart into that sort of identity of, if we want to be known like the Bereans were known, they had an identity that said that they studied the scripture with a heart of integrity. One that I thought about is, I mentioned earlier, I've been so glad that as a group we have embraced the idea of Barry should not be the only person in our pulpit. The elders shouldn't be the only people that speak to us. That we have really taken steps to broaden the people who teach our Bible classes and fill our pulpit. And so some of you may not have like the behind the scenes knowledge there. I guess there's like 2.5 years ago, the elders made that decision. It's not like it just happened overnight, by the way. That's not how much great leadership things happen. The elders decided years ago that they wanted that, and they selected some of the men who they knew had an interest in that and asked us, I was one of them, to speak and teach more, with the goal of us becoming better at it. By the way, they weren't saying we were awful, but they were saying some more reps would be good. We'd like to offer that to you. Will you take that responsibility? For most of us, that was a request that we preach quarterly. For most of us, before that, we'd never preached more than once a year. So that was a big step. Well, now, if you think about the guys that were asked to do that, I was one of them. Michael Lindsay was one of them. David Deloge, and then Drew Hull, and Drew's moved. So, yeah, I know, sad face. So you think about the three that are left, we've done that a lot, and we are very comfortable teaching and preaching now. So that was great for us. But it may be time to ask some other people to step up and for us to step back. What that may mean is you don't remember how bad some of our lessons were 2 years ago. And so anytime you ask new people to grow, there will be a painful time potentially where this didn't go as well as we thought it would. That's part of growing leaders. Well, if we are going to think about that, we need to consider things like, whoever slanders his neighbor secretly, I will destroy. If we're going to expand and encourage each other to grow and do things we don't do now, we have to be ready and willing to encourage that service and embrace when it might not be as good as the guy who's been doing it for 30 years or 50 years, right? That's part of when we identify a goal for how we want to grow, thinking about, well, what's the status of my heart so that I can enable that growth and encourage my brethren in it. Thank you for your time. I'd encourage you to think about this for yourself, for your family. I know I would love if you would talk to me about it. I know the other deacons would love, especially in their area, if you would. And certainly the elders are always open for that sort of feedback as well. The New Year's a great time to think about renewal and change. And so I'd invite you to think about that and share it with us. Don't just keep it to yourself. Thank you, guys. Love you all.
good to have everyone out this evening. We're going to try a couple of the newer songs that we've sang before. Our first song is God is For Us.
When I got to preach 2 weeks ago, I referenced Isaiah 51. And I like to read that, or a portion of it, first 16 verses for us this evening as encouragement. And to give context, again, this is from a portion of Isaiah that's speaking to Israel, the remnant that was in Babylon. And 51 specifically is written to give them encouragement that God will save them. So keep that context in mind. Listen to me, you who follow after righteousness, you who seek the Lord. Look to the rock from which you were hewn, and to the hole of the pit from which you were dug. Look to Abraham your father, and to Sarah who bore you, for I called him alone, and blessed him, and increased him. For the Lord will comfort Zion. He will comfort all her waste places. He will make her wilderness like Eden, and her desert like the garden of the Lord. Joy and gladness will be found in it, thanksgiving and the voice of melody. Listen to me, my people, and give ear to me, O my nation, for law will proceed from me, and I will make my justice rest as a light of the peoples. My righteousness is near, my salvation has gone forth, and my arms will judge the peoples. The coastlands will wait upon me, and on my arm they will trust. Lift up your eyes to the heavens and look on the earth beneath, for the heavens will vanish away like smoke. The earth will grow old like a garment, and those who dwell in it will die in like manner. But my salvation will be forever, and my righteousness will not be abolished. Listen to me, you who know righteousness, you people in whose heart is my law. Do not fear the reproach of men, nor be afraid of their insults, for the moth will eat them up like a garment, and the worm will eat them like wool. But my righteousness will be forever, and my salvation from generation to generation. Awake, awake, put on strength, O arm of the Lord. Awake as in the ancient days, in the generations of old. Are you not the arm that cut Rahab apart and wounded the serpent? Are you not the one who dried up the sea, the waters of the great deep, that made the depths of the sea erode for the redeemed to cross over? So the ransomed of the Lord shall return and come to Zion with singing, with everlasting joy on their heads. They shall obtain joy and gladness. Sorrow and sighing shall flee away. I, even I, am he who comforts you. Who are you that you should be afraid of a man who will die, and of the Son of Man who will be made like the grass? And you forget the Lord your Maker, who stretched out the heavens and laid the foundation of the earth. You have feared continually every day because of the fury of the oppressor, when he is prepared to destroy. And where is the fury of the oppressor? The captive exile hastens that he may be loosed, that he should not die in the pit, and that his bread should not fail. But I am the Lord your God, who divided the sea, whose waves roared. The Lord of hosts is his name, and I have put my words in your mouth. I have covered you with the shadow of my hand, that I may plant the heavens, lay the foundations of the earth, and say to Zion, you are my people. A problem that I personally struggle with a lot is whenever I read Scripture, I consider it academically. Often only academically. And that's, well, the only is not good. The academically part is fine. But it's also not that different from when I was in high school and I read The Mayor of Casterbridge or Great Expectations, and you study those academically. And I can confess to you with a great deal of confidence that I have no faith in Charles Dickens. His words don't mean anything to me. He writes like he was paid by the word, which I'm pretty sure he was for a good portion of it. And you can see that if you approach Scripture only from that perspective, you're not going to walk away from it with any more faith than you would reading any other literary work. And it's good to consider references and to consider the Hebrew and the Greek. It's good to memorize the lists of the kings and genealogies. It's good to know those things, and all of that's very important to study. But Isaiah here in 51, when he makes references, he's not doing it as a literary exercise. When he talks about Abraham and Sarah, he's not doing it to be clever and to say, ooh, look, I'm pointing out this fun thing from Hebrew history. When he talks about the Garden of Eden, it's not a literary appeal. Likewise with the destruction of Egypt, with the splitting of the Red Sea, with creation that he mentions near the end. None of those are just there to be literary references, to look at and be, oh, that's really interesting. Let me write them down in the margin and move on with my life. They're there to incite faith in the audience. They're there because these people that this is being written to are going through a really difficult trial, and they need to know that the God who chose Abraham and pulled him out will pull them out. They need to realize that the God who crafted Eden for man to dwell with God in a relationship with him is trying to do that again. They need to know that the God who destroyed Egypt, who tore Egypt apart, wounded it like a serpent, as it says in verse 9, will do that to Babylon. That the God who created all things can make this happen. I, like everyone else, have difficulties in life. And to have faith is not just to push those to the side and to say it doesn't matter because it'll be great later, but rather to actually trust that whenever I read stuff in here, stories of a God who saves, who is merciful, who works justice, who is kind and gracious, that he provides that to me as he says he does. When we sing songs like we just did about God being for us, that doesn't mean anything unless you read this book as more than just literature. It only means something if you trust that the God who saved these people will save you. And I encourage you, and I encourage myself to approach a relationship with God like that, to know that these are not just words. This is not just an exercise. It's internalizing the nature of the person that I and we call Father. To realize that whenever things are difficult, which, mind you, in my circumstances, they're not as bad as being imprisoned in Babylon was, that God cares and he hears and he will rescue. It is, like always, harder to do that in the moment, but that's why you go back to these stories. That's why you cycle through them, not just to memorize, but to truly internalize the fact that this God is my God, my Father, the person who wants a relationship with me. If there's anything that we can do for you tonight, and seeking a closer relationship with God and dealing with the sin of your life and dealing with the negative circumstances, the bad hand life has dealt you, then please make that known. Let's stand and sing.